You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Welcome into another edition of the James Boyd Podcast. I, of course, am James Boyd, joined by my editor, Jim Aiello. And Jim, it's hot. It's July. It is time for Colts camp. We're in the thick of it these days. So how are you doing in cool Chicago? At least cool indoors, I would hope.
I was gonna say I'm air conditioned. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm doing fine. I'm seeing all this training camp videos from my computer and my
desk. Do you
miss
it at all?
Just sitting... Of course, yeah. Honestly, I do. Here, I was gonna say I missed the beginning of camp, and then like a week in, I'm gonna be like, I'm really sorry, guys. Like this is tough. like I'm pretty happy to be here and not. I was telling my wife the other day, like I was such a stickler for like. I don't know. I thought like wearing shorts to work was like not the most professional thing in the world.
Oh my gosh. Oof.
So I got made fun of a lot by the guys on the beat, the Wells, the Holder, Kiefer, some of these guys early on, because I would wear pants and like a button down. I would roll up the sleeves and stuff like that, but you see me dripping sweat the whole time. I fought it as long as I could, man. Then I'm like, all right, I think after the first year, I was just like I gotta just give in and go back, because if I don't look a little, doesn't have to be that professional looking all the time. So
yeah. I went through the same thing when I was in college, or when I covered colleges for the University of Illinois. When I got into my professional career, I did it for about 5 or 6 months before I moved to Indianapolis to cover the Pacers. And I had the same type of experience where I was putting on jeans every day and trying to wear the collared shirt. And yeah, that did not translate well. I sweated out a lot of good outfits for that reason. And so, yeah, today I have on a Bruce Lee t-shirt, be
nice.
like water. And I have on some black Nike shorts and some highlighter shoes that a couple of kids at camp enjoyed. And so that was cool.
Well, you're leaving out your signature too. You got the bucket hat.
Oh, the bucket hat. Yeah, no bucket hat for the podcast. Currently, I know this is an audio podcast for those listening, but yeah, I don't have the bucket hat on. I'm indoors. I am safe from the sun. The sunscreen was applied. My nose isn't peeling too much. So I think I'm in good shape, Jim.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. Well, like I said, you get to spend time at training camp. You got to talk to Chris Ballard earlier this week. You got to watch the quarterback battle that everyone, not just in Indianapolis, but around the NFL is talking about, which is kind of funny in some ways, because it's like, It's not a real sexy quarterback battle where people are like, oh, it's this like grizzled veteran against this like first round pick and who's going to win. Like some of those ones. This is like, oh, you have this failed guy who played for the Giants and this maybe failing guy playing for the Colts, and they're trying to see who's not a failure, who's going to be the starting quarterback. So yeah, it's a little bit different here. So we'll get into that. Some of the camp standouts. I know you really want to talk about Justin Wally, and we'll talk about some, Tyler Warren and some of the other guys. But let's rewind all the way back to the beginning of camp, where Chris Ballard does his annual pre-training camp presser. Usually, he picks a time to tell the media why they don't understand something and why they all doubted him. And here's why he's gonna. At least one time that happens. I think he did it again. But the more important stuff that he talked about was the quarterback battle. But also, I wanted to talk about like the way he's talking about the new ownership structure, obviously, with Jim Irsay gone. His daughter's now in charge. We've talked about this on this podcast, but and kind of our curiosity as to how things are going to be different, or is it going to be like a gap year where they're like, oh, we'll evaluate everything, or it doesn't seem like that. It really seems like Carly she's had her finger on the pulse of the Colts for a lot longer than just a year or two. It seems like it's been more than a decade of her really knowing what's going on, ins and outs, so that like I don't think this will be like, oh, let me just evaluate what's happening over here for a year. I think if things aren't up to snuff to begin with, she seems like she would be prepared to make changes. And I'm curious about what you think of that, and then how, how the way Chris Ballard talked about the new structure.
Yeah, you know what? Talking to Chris about this, he was asked directly, hey, how do you feel about the pressure of the new ownership and, perhaps having to deal with heightened expectations or more pressure or a hotter seat regarding his job security? And he said nothing really changes for him. Despite the change in ownership, he was saying that a lot of the daughters, and particularly Carly Ursay Gordon, who's the principal owner now, will have her father in mind when she makes these decisions, and she won't just be willy-nilly and things of that nature. And also that, of course, it'll be different. I don't think anybody can be Jim Irsay. He was truly one of one when it comes to team ownership and how outspoken he was, how flamboyant he was at times. I think she'll dial it back from that part, but he didn't seem like he had that much more pressure on him, Jim. But I will say there wasn't necessarily how do I say this, the snippiness, because I remember one remark that he made. It might have been last year. I believe it was last year, right before the season started. I was able to ask him, why should people believe in your plan when the plan through the first 7 years to that point hadn't been anything fruitful? Again, one playoff win during your tenure, only two playoff berths, haven't won the division. And at the time he said, well, I believe in myself. I believe in what we're doing. And, if it gets me fired, so be it. Those were his words. And I'm like, if it gets you fired, yep. So now you've been brought back. You were not fired. One of the last decisions, actually, that Jim Irsay made before he died as team owner was to retain you. And now that ownership has changed, I just wonder if a little bit of that, I don't want to call it arrogance, but just sort of defiance has waned a bit. He was still a little defiant at certain points throughout his annual preseason or training camp press conference. But for the most part, Jim, I thought that he had dialed it back a little bit. And honestly, the thing about it is that it's all cyclical at this point. I feel like every year we get to this point, and as long as Chris Ballard is the general manager,
yeah,
we're going to have these same questions.
Yeah.
Have you done enough? Is your quarterback going to figure it out? Can you win here? Do you feel any pressure? I mean, it's the same stuff. So it's almost like, I feel like fans have become slightly apathetic towards him because they know that they haven't accomplished anything of greatness lately. But they're also unsure of if he'll ever really be pushed out of here or have something for the consequences of not winning. So I do think that, the clearest message we heard from Carly Ursay in regard to maybe some pressure that he feels or doesn't feel, when she said in her first meeting with us in the media after her father passed that, hey, Shane and Chris know they have things to fix. I believe in them, but they got to fix it. That to me was very important, and we can't overlook that. So yeah, Chris Ballard can talk to us about a big game, not feeling pressure. He did the whole pressures, when you're working a job and trying to make ends meet. And I'm like, let's keep it football, for the most part.
Yeah. We all know that. We all have the perspective.
What did you think of that sort of deflection?
That's what he does. Like I said, and again, this is coming from a guy that personally I enjoy Chris. I think he's a good person, and I think he's good with the media and all that kind of stuff. But he does tend to deflect that way. I made the joke about him getting mad at the media for a while. I'm finding in the transcript you guys didn't know who Zaire Franklin was when we drafted him, and you didn't know who Shaq Leonard. He likes to do that. He did that last year with the DBs. That didn't work out so well. I still remember him doing it with the left tackle situation after Costanzo, and he was like, you guys should have known we were going to do this guy. And again, I'm only remembering the bad ones. I'm sure there have been some good ones. And he might be right about linebacker. It's just kind of you talked about the cyclical nature of this. It's just who Chris Ballard is, right? At this point, we've known him. I was in Indy for the first 6 years of his tenure. I've been covering the Colts in a different capacity now for another 3. So I've been here pretty much for the whole Chris Ballard era. Everything he says in some way I've heard before. You know what I mean? And again, not a criticism. It's just, what are you going to say different in 9 years? So, but you're right. I don't know. It does. It's more of let's just see what you do on the field, because even if he is cyclical in the way he says things and we hear the same things, he did operate differently this offseason. We've talked about it. Got to give him credit for it, I would say, is that it was a more aggressive offseason for him than we've ever seen before, honestly, or in totality with all the moves.
Absolutely. Brought in Daniel Jones, which we'll get into, Travarius Ward, Cam Bynum. Both those two guys, by the way, look pretty good through the first 3 days of camp. I know that Travarius Ward had a rest day today as a veteran, but nevertheless, when those guys have been out there, they've been making plays. They look like they were worth the money that they were paid, and obviously a lot of that is still somewhat premature, but I feel confident in saying that they're playmakers and they're proving themselves because we've seen them do it in other uniforms for a very long time. These aren't guys who are, somewhat established. No, they're entrenched in the NFL and they're widely respected as being in the upper tier of their position group. Now, I will say one of the things that we were able to press Chris Ballard on was Anthony Richardson and the development of him and the quarterback situation as a whole, but really Anthony, because I think it's such a unique situation to have a guy who is only 23, number 4 pick in the draft a few years ago, but has had so many different things that he struggled with. It's been the injuries, obviously, first and foremost. He's only played 15 games, 15 starts through his first 2 seasons. He's missed 17 games due to injury, never started more than 4 games in a row in his career.
Right.
Also the inaccuracy, 47.7% last year, lowest in the league, lowest in franchise history. You can't win football games like that. It's just untenable. Number 3, the immaturity. You got benched 2 games because you weren't preparing as you were supposed to. And so all of these factors, I think, are a reason why Daniel Jones was brought in. But also it's just unique to hear Chris Ballard say, we're not giving up on him. And I'm thinking to myself, yes, I know you can't say that publicly, but I truly believe, that the Colts believe that this dude can still figure it out. And the weird part to me though, Jim, is when we press Chris and he's like, well, this year isn't a make it or break it year. How is it not? That's my only, I mean, how is it not? And I know, one of the more viral moments, I guess, from that press conference, and I'll be honest here. Obviously I knew when I clipped that and put it on social media, it would go everywhere. But when I'm asking him, okay, you're saying it's not a make or break year. Hell, I believe it is. Why the difference?
Right.
And so what do you think of his response and who he used to sort of respond with?
Yeah. So he says no. He says, do you think people regret Baker Mayfield's timeline, Sam Darnold's timeline? And I think you pointed out that those, I don't know if it was you.
It was
I think it was you. Yeah, that they changed teams. They had to change locations. They had to either get away from a bad thing or they had to do some growing up or whatever it ended up being. Again, in all these individual cases, and they're not the only 2 examples of this. So, listen, I can't decide how I feel about it because, again, I still, again, I've been clear about this. I still think it's in there with Anthony. The hurdles that you mentioned, it's insane to think about. Like, it's not just one thing. It's not just injuries. Oh, if he was just not hurt, he'd be fine. Or if he was just a little more accurate, he'd be fine. Like the Josh Allen thing, right? Like, if he was just a little more accurate, he'd be fine. But Josh Allen stayed on the field and didn't have leadership issues. Like, we've got all of it. It's all there. Like, all 3 things that you need to be a good quarterback, they're all there. He's got to overcome all of it. That said, like, I can't decide if Ballard is trying to, like, convince himself or if he's just trying to not convince ownership, but maybe it's like in his own mind, he's like, it's his pick, right? This is the pick. He's talked about it before. If I miss on the quarterback pick, that's it for me. Well, okay. Like, did you miss on the quarterback pick? I can't decide if he's getting defensive because of that, because he truly believes in Anthony. I don't know. I like to think that he truly believes in Anthony. Otherwise, he wouldn't have kept him around and kept this quarterback job open if he didn't. Not just to save his own hide kind of a thing. So I don't know. What was your interpretation of it? Because that was the way I think of it is that I truly believe that he thinks it's still in there, even if it's going to be really hard to get out.
The question I have when he responded in that manner is, okay, when does self-preservation kick in?
That's what I mean. Yeah. I don't know.
For you, not for Anthony, for you. When do you say, okay, yeah, I might have missed on this guy, but this other guy we brought in, Daniel Jones, he might win me more games. And if we win more games, we make the playoffs. If we win a game in the playoffs, will that save my job? Will that keep me here in Indianapolis? And I think that is a fair question to ask because you may believe in him, but does the ownership feel that way? And we know that Jim Irsay had an affinity for Chris Ballard. Do the daughters have that same affinity for you if you don't have success? And so to me, those are big questions that sort of need to be answered this season. I don't know if you can wait, any longer. And I still think that, I'm thinking of quarterbacks that have been through similar situations with Anthony that have struggled so much with one franchise early on, high draft picks. The only one I can think of in the last probably 10 years is Bryce Young, where he came in. And even then, I'm not like 100% sure Bryce Young is like the answer in Carolina.
Yeah, we
However,
don't know yet.
he did bounce back. I'll give him that. Like when they benched him, he was awful his rookie year. They benched him. They reinserted him back into the lineup as a sophomore in the NFL, and he looked really good to end the year. He looked like a confident guy. They seem to have believed in him now. They're not, in fairness to the Panthers, they're not going into year 3 with Bryce Young questioning who's their guy. He is their guy. For Anthony, It's just not the same. And on top of him, Chris Ballard, that is saying, oh, you got to give it time. You got to let it play out. How much time is too much time? And do you have enough time to wait this out? Like, yeah, you could, in theory, structure a contract a certain way with him that isn't a ton of money if you want to extend him. But like, if he comes back this season and what we've seen continues, how long are you going to let that play out? How long are you going to try to believe in that? Will you even believe in that to start the season is a good question, which we'll get into as far as the quarterback battle. So I don't know, Jim. I did correct him. I was like, wait a second, those guys switched teams, and he just kind of ignored it and was like, hey, we got to be patient. We got to figure it out. He mentioned that Anthony's on a positive trajectory, and I was like, okay, let's follow up with that. What does that mean? And he mentioned, how he's been in some of the clutch moments, the Jets game, late against the Patriots, going back to his rookie season, how he brought him back against the Rams. But even then, if I'm sitting here trying to say that the good outweighs the bad, I'd be lying. The bad
you can't
outweighs the good by a lot. There's potential still there, but as I've often said here on the show, Jim, potential is a backhanded compliment. I could potentially be the most handsome man in the world. I could have all the potential in the world. It ain't gonna happen. So what are we talking about here?
Well, does it make any difference to you? Maybe not. And again, if it doesn't, you can say it. But does it make any difference to you that literally we're talking about the year 3 of Anthony, obviously, but he's 2 days older than the number 1 pick than Cam Ward. That I'm looking at Baker Mayfield's rookie year with the Browns. He was the same age Anthony Richardson is now. They're both. He's 23. Anthony Richardson's 20. Darnold came in young too, by the way, and so I think he came in at like 21. My point being is, does age matter in this? Like, is there some maturity in a lot of different ways, but is there maturity that comes with age versus just years in the league? Is that a fair thing to like factor in or consider as you move forward here, or is it just we're entering year 3?
Possibly. I mean, he is a father now. I got to see him actually with his family. Very cute moment with his son after one of the practices earlier this week and his fiance. But to me, Jim, I don't really buy too much into the age thing, him being young, because I think that you're still up against that timeline of, okay, you're going into year 3. Like if you told me his contract froze because he was this young and, you didn't have to make a decision on his option next year, or you didn't have to make a decision on whether or not you want to extend him by probably next year or the year after, that to me would be a big indicator. But no, I think that the age at this point, I mean, you want to see more progress than he's made through his first 2 years, especially going into year 3. And I guess we can now pivot a little bit more to the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
To me, Jim, one of the biggest factors we had to just start off with camp was just, is he going to be available? Which fortunately for Anthony, he was. And I thought that was a big first step in resuming this QB competition.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to add on that part of it, only to say, what have you seen so far? I mean, because like, honestly, it felt like, again, I read your reports from the first 2 days, I edit them and put them on the website. But the first 2 days, it seemed, and we've joked about it on the phone, like I can tell, I wouldn't say disgust is your level, but I can tell when you're just annoyed by the level of play by something. And it didn't seem like the first 2 days were super impressive by either quarterback.
No. And honestly, you can tack on the third day here today, this Friday. I didn't think through the first 3 days of camp, I'm like, yeah, I can see why they're having a good competition. But to me, it's kind of been versus Like,
yeah,
there hasn't been a whole lot of separation. There hasn't been one guy lighting it up. I thought that I'll start with today, I guess, because it is Friday and give you the latest. But I thought Anthony had his best day passing today. He was 8 of 11 in the team periods, took some of the check
Okay.
downs, had some nice crossers over the middle. It seems like he likes that the crossing routes are the ones that he has, for we talk about chunk plays, those are the ones that he's hit the most. Hasn't really connected on the deep ball like he's supposed to. Had a bad interception yesterday. That was just, it was poorly thrown, underthrown, and it was an easy interception for Juju Brents.
Yeah.
Usually, I guess it doesn't really matter because the pick is the pick, but if you want a guy to pick you off, Daniel Jones had one in 7-on-7. I believe it might have been the first or second day of camp, where Kenny Moore had like a one-handed snag near the sideline. That was just a sick play. And it was a bad throw. It was a bad read. But Kenny Moore had to be like spectacular to even come down with the ball. Juju Brents, that was like, I'm a center fielder waiting for it to just come to me. And I was wondering why he threw it like that. And Jim Bob Cooter mentioned that it was a new motion involved on that play. But nevertheless, those moments, people can always tell us that training camp doesn't matter. We don't know what we see. Shout out to JJ Watt, by the way. I kind of agree with him when he says, like, we go all crazy about these, training camp notebooks and reports and all those things, but maybe we don't understand the full context. I do know this, though. When you throw it to the other team, that isn't good. And so, both quarterbacks.
Never intended.
Yeah,
Never intended.
I'm an expert with simple stuff, as my father would say. So some things are very easy to kind of digest. And I thought that Anthony had a bad throw in 11-on-11 yesterday. Like I said, Daniel Jones had an interception as well. But neither one, to me, has really stood out from a passing game standpoint. Like none of us on the sideline, I would venture to say, not to speak for them, but really to speak in consensus with them, kind of breaking it down with Joel and Steven and Nate and others on the beat. None of us would say that anybody's lit it up so far or really found an offensive rhythm. If they have been efficient, it's because they've been sort of dinking and dunking their way down the field. And really, to me, I was thinking, like, how many yards is this passing offense going to have if it's going to look like this?
You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Well, that's okay. So that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Was only 3 days in. I have a couple of Anthony and offense related questions. The first is, have you noticed anything different about the offense in terms of the play calls? And again, I know this is really hard 3 days in. You're not seeing them against other teams, but I'll ask with the context of, like, I'm expecting Shane Steichen to run a much more user-friendly, training wheels on offense than he did last year. In terms, I think he's going to embrace the QB run stuff, obviously, if it's either quarterback, frankly. But a lot more short throws, easy passes, screens, that kind of stuff, just to try to get confidence up, easy completions, get these guys. They have some nice yards after the catch type of players, especially now with Tyler Warren, and Michael Pittman's always been that kind of guy. So I am curious, do you think that's the way the offense is headed? Because I think part of the issue, not putting, obviously Richardson had plenty of his own, but part of the issue last year was Anthony was pushing the ball downfield a lot and asked to make some big time, big boy throws which he can make on occasion, don't get me wrong, but like maybe needed a few more layups, and he, again, has to make the layups too. But do you think you're seeing anything in terms of a pattern with, like, are they going to have more layups? They're going to try to get more layups, try to get the bucket a little easier this year.
Yeah, to me, I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that Shane Steichen has stressed consistency so much. that I do wonder, okay, is this going to be a more conservative offense in a way where perhaps you sacrifice some of the deep shots, sorry, Alec Pierce, for the opportunity to
For sure.
stay on the field and move the chains?
Yep.
Because with Anthony, especially last year, I thought last year was just such a I'll venture to say this. I thought Anthony regressed actually last year from his rookie year. His rookie year was better to me, even though it was a 4-game sample size, it was small, whatever. But for Anthony last year in particular, it was very much boom or bust. I have a 50-yard gain or I got nothing. I got this fastball and I'm throwing it straight past you, or I throw this fastball and hung over the plate and you're crushing it the opposite way because I made a mistake. And I think
Right.
that is what they're kind of going through with this offense. So to me, I did kind of pick up on that. I think that looking at some of the actions that they've done and hearing from some of the players, Tanner Bortolini, Matt Gonzalez, Bernard Ryman, some of them spoke about how they don't have to adjust as much. They don't have to change as much, considering that, Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones have similar skill sets. So a lot of it, I think, will include, RPO action and play action passes and, the occasional QB run. I think they'll probably want to run Anthony perhaps more than Daniel Jones, just because I think Anthony's probably a better runner of straight line. But even
For
then,
sure. Yeah.
when Daniel Jones had his best season in New York, as you know, Jim, he ran, I believe, that year for about 700 yards.
He ran a lot. There was a
Yeah.
lot of quarterback design run in that.
Exactly.
Yep.
So maybe that is part of how you get your quarterback more involved, how you get him to be more dynamic without having to throw the ball so much down the field. Because yes, early on, Jim, in last year's game, I thought particularly before the benching for Anthony, Shane Steichen was dialing stuff up like this guy was Peyton Manning in his prime. I'm like, he can't make these throws. He can't make these reads just now. So streamline it, I'm sorry, dumb it down, and then go from there. So I do think I've noticed that through the first 3 days of camp. But even then, like, I don't want to, speak too much out of turn here and say, oh, this is what their offense is definitely going to be. It's just that,
I know it's early.
yeah, but just early on, though, I feel confident in saying that it has been a more concerted effort to give him easier looks to make, easier reads to make. And today in particular, after a rough couple of first days, I thought for Anthony, this day, he made sure to hit the check downs. Might have held it onto it maybe a little bit too long. Also, Daniel Jones held onto the ball a little bit too long sometimes as well. Neither one, again, has looked great, fantastic in the offense, but you can tell that if it looks the way it's supposed to, we should see some more check downs, crossers, and hopefully, and for the sake of fantasy users and also just Colts fans, some Tyler Warren plays in there as well.
You're going to see plenty of checkdowns with Daniel Jones, as I think Dan Duggan, our one of our
laid
Giants
that out for
reporters.
us. Yep.
Yeah, I was gonna say, explain to you when they signed Daniel Jones is that his reluctance to push the ball downfield following some of the injuries that he had early in his career has been kind of a big thing. It was kind of a big problem with Brian Dable and the Giants, and they wanted him to push the ball downfield, hold on to the ball a little bit longer, and try to go, and didn't really happen. So I don't know if, again, maybe he can change his stripes. Maybe he can. I mean, we're talking about Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. Like, Daniel Jones is at least in that conversation, right? Changes teams, former top pick, like hoping to rediscover that formula that made you successful a couple years ago with the Giants. So again, he might be in that same thing. So the other question I wanted to ask about was, because I know you haven't had like a good chance like to write about it, because again, early on, you're still trying to figure this out, and there's some volume concerns with Anthony. And I think like maybe he's not letting it rip or letting it loose just yet with the shoulder. Maybe just still testing it out, feeling it out a little bit. But like, what have you noticed in terms of, is he putting more touch on some of these shorter passes? Because we all know that he loves to let the ball rip as hard as he can, even on some of the short passes. Or is he dialing it back because of the? I mean, again, you're not going to know all the answers to this, but is he dialing it back because of the shoulder, or is he trying to be a little bit more of a finesse, more accurate quarterback by just maybe not throwing things 100 miles an hour?
Yeah, I thought the first couple of days he was a bit hesitant and kind of being a little too touchy-feely when it comes to trying to throw the perfect pass, or not really following through on his release, and being maybe just a bit hesitant or just rusty, because even though he says he's been throwing, he hasn't been throwing at the volume and intensity of what I would expect throughout a training camp and against live bodies who are moving around, flying around, and obviously are trying to make reads and things like that. Usually if you're just throwing in the offseason, I don't know how complex it gets when it comes to you and the person you're throwing it to. I mean, we watch these highlight tapes or these workout videos all the time. You're not seeing, a bunch of safeties come to the field too and get their working with you. That's usually not what you're seeing. But I think for Anthony, One, they've limited him in the individual portions of practice so that they can still keep him at an even portion, splitting it with Daniel Jones during the team portion. So Anthony has not thrown as much volume as the other quarterbacks in individual drills, but he's taken pretty much the same amount of snaps and reps in 11 on 11 drills as Daniel Jones. And for me, the biggest thing with Anthony is just making sure that you trust what you see, because when he's hesitant, I think he's worse. It's almost like he's a better player. And Chris Ballard mentioned this: when they're down, or when the game is tight, or when it's the fourth quarter, some of his best stuff has come from just playing and kind of playing with without all the extra stuff perhaps floating in his brain and overthinking it. So I think early on we've seen signs of that. At least today, at least we saw a couple of signs of him being a little more decisive. But then even then, I still wonder when it comes to just the accuracy of some of these throws, because being a little bit off in the NFL can change a lot. These guys can't hit you. He threw one the other day, Jim, and I can't remember if it was 7-on-7 or 11-on-11, but he threw one high to Alec Pierce, and Alec went up and got it. But in my mind, I'm thinking, I think it was Juju Brents who was in coverage. I was like, in a real game, Juju Brents would have put his shoulder in Alec Pierce's ribcage, and we would have been talking about a hospital ball. So like, those are the moments that you can't have as a quarterback. And obviously it's going to happen time to time, but they just can't happen as frequently. So this was a good sign, a good step forward, I think, for Anthony Richardson today. And certainly not something where I'm like, the job is his. No, I don't believe that. I think this job is very much open. And then on the flip side, Daniel Jones is kind of a similar thing where, he's a safer, I guess, thrower and a more efficient, passer. But what does that mean if you're not pushing the ball down the field? And even to his, tendencies a little bit, holding on to it too long.
All right, I've been thinking on my mind. I want to transition over to some of the other players, not just the quarterbacks on this team. But I have one.
There's more players on the team than those guys.
There shouldn't. I mean, not for the first week of camp.
If I send in a Matt Gonzalez and Tanner Bortolini feature story, I think the Athletic might be asking, do you still want to work here? And no disrespect to those guys, love them, but I'm gonna have to show them some love within another story about the quarterbacks. The nature of the beast, man. You got to feed the beast.
The first week, it's all quarterbacks. It has no.
There you go.
So okay. So you asked me initially about the Chris Ballard, why he brings up Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. Okay, self-preservation is what I think it's probably the right answer, frankly. Here's my other one, just out of curiosity. Do you think what keeps him up at night is getting fired for Richardson failing, or what keeps him up at night is he moves on from Anthony Richardson, somebody else picks him up, and he becomes a star with somebody else?
Ooh, what a question. You're like Jake Query with that question. I think it might be the latter, because he's good either way, financially and I would think family-wise and all that type of stuff. But I think the competitor
in him keeps him up at night. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he'll be all right.
I think that would bother him, because Anthony, a lot of it has to do with putting it together, and not being the guy that did that, I think would kind of scar him in a way. But the reason why I say he's kind of talking out of both sides of his mouth, Jim, is because when it comes to resetting with a different team and kind of revitalizing your career, in a way, they're asking Daniel Jones to do that.
Right.
And they're saying, well, no, wait a second. Who you were in New York is not all of who you are. What if you can be a playmaker here? What if you can be a guy here? And don't believe for a second that Daniel Jones came here to be Anthony Richardson's backup. He came here to make Anthony Richardson the backup. And they had to sell him on that belief. They had to give him that basically that word of bond to say, if we bring you here, if we pay you this $14 million, you will have a legitimate chance to start. And I believe they kind of backed that up with the financial investment. You don't give $14 million to players you never want to play, or that you don't really care if they come and be your backup or not. And so I think that is a very big factor, and certainly a unique question. But Chris Ballard, I think that he took a swing on a quarterback, and he's always said, like, when I take the quarterback, you guys are going to kill me if I don't get it right. And he wants so badly to get it right, but I just don't know if it's possible. And I haven't been given many reasons to believe it's possible. I know Chris Ballard has harped on, like, well, he's had clutch moments and he's had good throws. And he mentioned this, Jim. This was hilarious to me. So do you remember the Titans game from last year? They ran for like 330 yards. It was a crazy, weird game because they ran for so much. And we started looking up like the all-time records for, rushing yards. It probably was like a top 10 rushing game in Colts history.
Yeah.
And he mentioned the throw near the end of the game because if you, for those listening, you'll remember that game got kind of close late. And Anthony had to make a throw to basically seal it on third down. He had one throw in that game, I believe, to Michael Pittman Jr. on the sideline there on like 3rd and 7 or whatever it was to pick up the first down, ice the game. And he referenced that play. And I wanted to tell him so badly, like, you guys didn't even throw the ball that game. Like, can I really base it off of that one? Like, it's not just that one play. He mentioned a couple others and a couple other moments, but I'm like, man, when you mentioned that, I was thinking that's like a very I'm grasping for straws moment to me. And it didn't, when you want to say you believe in a guy, I would hope that you're able to give me more than, a play or two, a quarter or two. Can you give me some games? Because right now, I don't know of many complete full games that Anthony Richardson has played and played well outside of the New York Jets one.
That's a good question.
I mean, the Rams, maybe his rookie year.
The Rams one was a good one, even though it started. If you're going to count his rookie year, which is
I feel like I have to. Last year, I feel like the only great game he had was the one against the Jets.
The debut against Houston wasn't bad. I mean, his season debut, I was 9 of 19, but it was 212 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also ran 6 times for 56 yards and a touchdown. That's pretty much, you take that pretty much most days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fair point. The Jets game, the Patriots game, again, the numbers aren't great. 12 of 24, 109, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, but he also ran again 9 times, 48 yards and a touchdown. I think he had the game-winning rushing touchdown in that one too. There's been some moments. You're right. The games, he's only played 14, 15 games, so like
that's what I'm saying.
Only 4 and he's only finished like 13 games.
Yeah.
So like the amount of like good examples you can cite aren't that high. I mean, you look at the passer rating. Shoot, I mean, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 above 70, and one of those he only threw 4 passes because he got hurt. So again, again, you're right. There's plenty of evidence to suggest this is not going to happen. I fully understand that. I was curious what you thought about the Chris Ballard thing, but let's transition again to the other players who deserve some due. And we'll mostly start with the good. Even though there is one guy that you told me on the phone today hasn't played so well, and I did want to mention. But start with the good, the guys who have stood out to you. I think number one that you're going to bring up is Justin Wally, but tell me if there's somebody else you want to do first, because I think that's the guy that you want to talk about.
Yeah, let's hit him and give him some love, because I think that it's not just me saying this. Everything that I've seen so far with his, sticky coverage, getting the first team reps pretty much all throughout camp so far through the first 3 days, playing inside, playing outside. Justin Wally has kind of proven why he was picked in the 3rd round. And then at the time, for those listening, I'll be honest, I was like, who? I believe Dane Brugler had a 6th round grade on this guy, but
yeah.
He has
the only one saying who.
Yeah, he's impressed. I mean, Charvarius Ward has spoken very highly of him. He's not someone who gives me the impression he's just going to give a guy lip service because they are his teammate. I think that him kind of going out of his way to say, hey, this dude is balling. He's got a lot to him, and I'm helping him along. That kind of spoke to me. And I also think that Lou Anarumo showing him some love. He's not a guy who's going to sugarcoat some stuff, BS some stuff. A lot of the players have said he coaches them very hard. Justin Wally said that earlier today, actually, that he gets coached very hard by this guy, and he can't take a play off. He can't make a mistake without hearing somebody chirping at him, which is good. But I think that all in all, I was a little bit surprised to see him out there with the starting unit on the first day of training camp, and for that to continue through the first 3 days overall, because keep in mind, Jalen Jones, in my opinion, Jim, was not a bad cornerback. Actually, he was pretty good. I think Jalen Jones has proven he's a starting caliber cornerback in this league. So for Justin Wally to supplant him and to be challenging that much, because, I mean, you could talk about position battles, and even Danny Pincer and Danny Pincer and Tanner Bortolini are, switching starting reps at center, and some of the linebacker rotations are kind of weird right now because Zaire Franklin isn't in there. But for cornerback, Justin Wally has been starting, and there really hasn't been any questions about him not starting. Like, he hasn't been rotating very much with anybody else. The only time he's rotated is when he's gone from inside to outside. So I think that it's a really cool development, but I'm also just curious to see, okay, is this an example of perhaps Lou Anarumo's preferences taking precedent over Chris Ballard's? Because Jalen Jones is the long, kind of lanky, bigger corner that Chris Ballard typically likes to draft, whereas Justin
Yeah.
Wally didn't have all the measurements, but he's more of like the ball hawking, playing the ball, kind of a tweener guy that you can do perhaps a little bit more with. And does that, bode well for an Anarumo defense that will be, multiple, will have some variety to it, and certainly will have different schemes?
I think I have three thoughts on this. The first thing I love your thought on the end of this is if Chris Ballard drafted this cornerback on day 2 of the NFL draft, and I'm looking at his measurables, and he's 5'10" with an arms under 31 inches, or 31 inches. Yes, 1,000% this is Lou Anarumo guy, because this is not the Chris Ballard of old that would have made, that has to have the height, the height and length guys that he really likes playing corners.
Right.
So I think you're 100% dead on that. The other thing I was going to bring up, I forgot my third. So my second thing I'm going to bring up is that I love what you said about Lou Anarumo, because again, I don't think he's going to just push shine on guys that he doesn't actually believe it. And two, I think what we heard from Paul Dehner, our Bengals reporter at The Athletic, is that he's tough on young guys, and young guys don't always love what he has to say and the way he coaches.
Right.
And I don't think he typically praises young guys. I think he typically likes veterans because they adapt to his offense and understand his offense better than young guys do. So for the fact that he's saying nice things about Justin Wally, that really sets off alarms for me in a good way. Just being like, man, maybe this kid is legit, because I don't think Lou would be talking about him this way if he didn't believe it.
You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Yeah, it certainly seems like his instincts are what drew them to him. Being around the ball, knowing how to play space, that certainly is something that I've noticed throughout training camp so far. But also, Justin was telling us that he's, taking a liking, or has been liked a lot by his peers, to the point where even after they get out of the team meetings and he's going over a bunch of different things with Lou Anarumo and others, he's also meeting up with Kenny Moore II and Travaris Ward and Jalen Jones already to go over more plays in depth. And he was saying Kenny Moore in particular has really gone out of his way to show him, okay, this is how I will play this coverage.
Yeah.
This is how I, use this, leverage or technique to make sure that my man doesn't beat me, and those little things like that. He's continued to stack even outside of the required team activities or what he would even do on his own. He was just saying, like, yeah, I'm always around these guys, so I'm figuring through the first couple of days I should probably continue to, ask them a bunch of questions. And so he seems like a very inquisitive person, very confident young man as well. He was just saying, you know what, I'm going to go out here and be who I am. And I think that he believes that he is, a starting caliber cornerback in the NFL. And if that happens to be sooner rather than later, good for him. And also it kind of validates where the Colts selected him, because usually third round picks play. And that is certainly important. And honestly, that's one of the things that has stood out to me. On the other side of the ball, Jim, I will say, Tyler Warren, nice to see you. The first day, Jim, when I was talking to you on the phone, and I do want to get your reaction to this. This is something you can react to. When I'm talking to you on the phone after the first day, and I'm telling you, man, Tyler Warren didn't do much. What was your reaction to that? Because I was like, hold on, what is this? This can't be a real thing.
Rookie, I mean, I was trying not to overreact on day one, like you said, but like
Oh, I was overreacting. I was
That's what day one's for.
overreacting.
No, I mean, I've told you before, I think Tyler Warren can be a big key in helping unlock this offense for both Shane Steichen and for Anthony Richardson in terms of a guy who can be a short to intermediate target, who has a huge wingspan. Therefore, Anthony doesn't need to be quite as accurate as he would need to be with a guy like Josh Downs over the middle of the field, especially. So, yeah, it was not concerning, just being like, okay, let's see if these days stack where he's not as involved, because that would be a problem. Again, like you said with Wally, like you draft a third round guy, you expect him to play. You draft a first round tight end, like you better get an impact. Like I know tight ends take a little bit to adjust to the NFL, but Chris Ballard doesn't draft tight ends or receivers or running backs or anybody really in the first round. That's not like an edge rusher. And so he took a chance. He rolled some dice here, and so he needs this to work. And I thought, you know, give it some time because I think they're going to try to make it work. So when you told me today that he was a little bit more involved and made it a pretty good catch, I think you're going to talk about here. That was like, okay, it's happening. It's coming. They have a plan for him.
Yes, I was just thinking, whatever you do, make sure you get it to number 84. Yeah, I'm joking tongue in cheek. Like, yeah, first day, rookie. But I thought that they made a concerted effort to try to give him the ball these last couple of days. They being Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. You saw some of the chunk yardage, some of the yards after catchability with Tyler Warren. Everyone keeps saying we can't wait to see this guy in pads. I believe their first padded practice will be Monday. They have one more to close out this first four-day in a row stretch here. Tomorrow's practice Saturday. It'll be in the afternoon. And then Monday they'll be in pads. So I think that will maybe, open up Tyler Warren a little bit more in this offense. But man, he has some great, great hands. If you just throw it in his vicinity, he's likely to come down with the ball or come away with the ball. And I say that because Anthony Richardson, he actually hit Warren on a nice crosser today, Jim, to start off some of the 11 on 11 work, which to me was notable because it's like, well, you got that guy to, one, enhance your offense, but two, to make life easier on your quarterback. So that to me was what they had kind of missed to Anthony's, defense, really, because they haven't had that tight end over the middle that makes life easier for so many young quarterbacks. They have not had that. But Tyler Warren showed flashes of that today, in my opinion, got more involved yesterday and today. Yesterday, he had it kind of reminded me of Gronk, Jim, where Anthony threw the ball on like an out route, like a little short out route to the sideline. Anthony threw it, and it kind of was too low. It was kind of around his shin area. And Tyler Warren was able to reach down and snag it, keep his balance, and then turn upfield. Now, he would have gotten, I believe, probably 4 or 5 more yards if Anthony hits him in stride there. I think that's a big part of, what happened. But even just him catching that pass, I was like, dang. And then today, same sort of thing. They're doing some kind of like wide receiver screen bubble or tight end bubble thing. And he got the ball out quick, Anthony Richardson, that is, to Tyler Warren, but it was like behind him. And Tyler Warren reached back one hand, snagged it, and then caught it and went upfield. And I was like, wow. And you could tell Anthony's reaction was, oh man, I just got bailed out by this guy because that was not the greatest throw or the best catch. The best throw. And the same can be said for Daniel Jones. Like, he hasn't, I don't want to make this seem like he's been some super accurate, dude, he's been more accurate than Anthony Richardson, but it's not like he's out here putting balls on guys like it's, I don't know, Matthew Stafford or Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, where Patrick Mahomes, you're throwing guys open. Neither have done that. Neither have thrown anybody open. A lot of it has been very much like, here's your progressions, here's your reads, here's who should be open. Okay, see it, throw it. But Tyler Warren is the kind of player I think that can make life easier on both because it just doesn't have to be perfect. And honestly, with this quarterback room, it won't be perfect. You're going to have to make some of the weird catches. And that's what I think hasn't happened enough. Last year, the Colts had a lot of drops, I think, throughout some of these games. And even early on in camp, there's been a couple of drops where I'm like, that compounds your quarterback issues. Drops by, Doolin had one on the first day. Jonathan Taylor had one on the first day. Michael Pittman Jr. had one. I'm like, you cannot be this group trying to help out your quarterbacks, but you're also dropping passes. So more work to be done. But Tyler Warren, very sure-handed.
Yeah, that's a great point you bring up with Warren over the middle and sure-handed and being that big target because even last year, Michael Pittman wasn't himself. I think we can all acknowledge that. He was playing through a back injury.
That's fair to say.
He had some drops. Like he definitely, I can picture a few nicely thrown Anthony Richardson passes that just went right through his hands.
Right.
last year. Just he was never playing up to his standards. So I think having two big, solid targets like Warren, like Pittman, healthy and ready to go should be a huge help. And obviously, you still have Pierce down the field and Downs doing his thing. So the weaponry for the Colts. I think if you listen to the you and other our listeners now listen to the Athletic Football Show, they broke down kind of the ancillary pieces for all the AFC teams, the NFC teams, and the Colts are pretty high up. They have a good running game. They have good receivers, good pass catchers. We'll see about the offensive line. I think that's something you and I are probably going to talk about the next time we podcast. So before we end this thing, though, I guess we're going to end it on. Oh no, what on something else?
Well, actually, I have one more. I have one more that we should probably hit just briefly. Bernhard Raimann. Your reaction to him?
Oh yeah.
Speaking
right.
on Query and Company, I don't want to leave that news out of here. Shout out to my brother from another, Jay Query on Query and Company on 107.5 The Fan. He did an interview with Bernhard Raimann where Bernhard was a little more candid about his contract situation than I thought he would be, Jim. And so when I caught wind of this interview, helps, I guess, have a couple of different jobs in the market. I was like calling you like, hey, wait a second, dude. I know I got to write about the quarterbacks, but we should probably get this in the, our outlet and, site where we got it from and mention this because the gist of it, and these are, Bernard's words and not mine. I'll pull some of this stuff up for you guys so I can read it verbatim. But I just thought like, wow, he went there. And honestly, it's funny to hear players kind of break rank when it's time to get paid. I think that is something that is unique to them because we saw a similar sort of reaction when Jonathan Taylor wanted to get paid, where the guy who is normally putting on I'm a team guy for the shoe, I love Indianapolis. That to me sort of changed a bit because it's time to get paid. It's time to, get after it and get this money. And so here's what Bernhard Raimann had to say when he was asked by Jay Query about his contract situation and going into a contract year. And Bernhard, said, quote, him and his agent or his agent and the Colts, quote, aren't on the same page. And then Jake followed up and said, what do you mean? And he meant financially, the money. And he went on to say, from my understanding, it's that the numbers don't always quite add up yet. They might value the position differently than my team thinks it is, but working on things. You started sending me immediate stats and comparisons, basically trying to be another agent for Bernhard Raimann. But
I'll say I'm on Bernhard Raimann's side of this thing, man. If the Colts
what are we doing?
Yeah, like this is a mistake, obviously. No, yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't know what they're asking for. I don't know the Chris Ballard, but end of the day, they got to get this deal done. You cannot let Raimann walk because if you think the money is a lot now, wait till he gets to free agency with a bunch of teams that need a young, proven left tackle. Because my goodness, like it's gonna be wild. I mean, did anybody expect Will Fries to get what is it, 80-something million?
I think 88 over 4.
Yeah. Like, I think
or 88 over 5. I'm sorry. Like
I was gonna say I think Zach Tom got 88 over 4. I think that's what you're
I got it confused. Yes, Zach Tom got 88 over 4, and then to your point, Will Fries 88 over 5. So I mean, this is not chump change, and he's playing left tackle, a premier position in the NFL.
Yep.
Even Zach Tom, if you want to go, well, last year you were technically a right tackle, maybe you're not as worth as much. It does not matter, man. You pay left tackles in this league, so. I don't think I don't want to overblow it. I think that Bernhard was definitely candid about it. And shout out to Bernie for being that candid. I mean, I appreciate it as a media member and someone who's covering this stuff. However,
for sure,
typically Chris Ballard and company have rewarded their homegrown talent, and especially up front. I mean, Ryan Kelly got an contract extension here. Quentin Nelson's got a couple of deals. Braden Smith got an extension. So this seems to be on par, but also you don't want to have a situation where you're going through so much turmoil and change back to back to back to back when it comes to Ryan Kelly isn't here anymore. Will Fries isn't here anymore. Braden Smith is in a contract year as well. Totally different ends of the spectrum for him.
Right.
Bernhard Raimann. So again, I'm very curious to see how that all plays out. But honestly, I should probably pre-write that contract extension story because it has to happen. If it doesn't happen, I truly think that would be franchise malpractice. When you find and you hit on a left tackle in the third round, pay him.
Like, here's what I don't quite understand. If he gets like maybe Ballard is like he wants to see it a little bit more or whatever. Okay, so say here's the two outcomes of that. One, he proves it, and you end up having to pay him a lot more because you're paying him up against when free agency is coming. Two, I don't think he's going to get bad. So the other option to me is he gets hurt, right? He gets hurt and doesn't get to prove it again this year. Well, guess what? We just saw with Will Fries, it doesn't matter. Like he got hurt and missed all of last year and got paid anyway. So you might as well just pay him now because I mean, again, I think if you're Chris Ballard, you look back and you probably wish you had paid Will Fries last year
Yep.
and gotten out ahead of this market. Even if he got hurt, you'd be like, oh, well, at least we have him back. Like,
Yeah. But
again, you
even
can't.
then, maybe not, Jim, because they did invest in the right
Sure.
guard position with Matt Gonzalez. They invested in center with Tanner Bortolini. They have not invested to the same degree at left tackle. I mean, who's behind Bernard Ryman if he goes down? Jalen Travis, Blake
Yeah.
Freeland. I mean, I don't feel comfortable with either starting in his place. So back
done.
up the Brinks truck, get it done. But honestly, I think if I had to pick, and this is just me speculating, but I
Yeah.
think it's common sense. If there's anything that they're far apart on, and as far as the numbers not being close, it might be guaranteed money.
Sure.
How
Usually
much do we
is.
want to guarantee? Yeah. So for those listening, I know we do it all the time, Jim. When a guy signs, I saw SGA in the NBA, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm like, how much money is he getting? It's almost $1 million a game for 82 games. Oh my gosh. But it's not necessarily the annual average, especially not in the NFL. The NBA, most of their contracts are fully guaranteed. The NFL, they're not. So a lot of these guys, their real contracts is whatever they're guaranteed, and they're haggling over that money. That's why JT Tuimoloau and other second-round picks held out for so long to sign their deals, because they want to get as much guaranteed money as possible. That way, if I get hurt, if I get cut, if I'm not as good as I'm supposed to be, it doesn't matter because I got my guaranteed money. So that to me will be interesting to hear what that number is and when that guaranteed money might end during an extension, because to me that's when your contract really quote unquote ends. Like, for example, I think after this season, Michael Pittman Jr. doesn't have any more guaranteed money on his deal. So you'll have options to, if he comes out and God forbid, Jim, he gets hurt again, he's not performing, you can kind of look and say, oh, he's getting older. Do we pay him again? Do we cut ties with him? You'll have some options there. So either way, I think Bernard Ryman still has most of the leverage, if not all of the leverage, when it comes to the left tackle position and also getting paid.
I couldn't agree more. All right, we'll move on real quick. One quick down note before we get to your crowning achievement as an athlete.
Yes.
Not so impressed with what you've seen from A.D. Mitchell so far.
No, not very impressed at all. He had a drop today that was a simple drop across the middle, perfect ball. You got to catch it. Had another drop, I believe, in 7-on-7s, or it might have been 11-on-11 yesterday. Again, same thing across the middle. Got to catch it. Yes, you're in traffic. And to myself, I'm thinking, man, in games, you're going to get hit. And you're dropping stuff over the middle when guys are just getting close to you. And I don't think it's necessarily like I'm afraid of contact thing. I don't want to paint it as simple as that. But I just wonder, again, is it a focus thing? Like, can you focus through the catch, through all the traffic, and just squeeze the ball? This is a guy who I think why I might be a little hard on him, maybe harder than most, is because when he does make plays, he will not let you not hear about it. He's very boisterous. Right. He's very in your face. He's, dapping up the trainers. He's throwing the ball in the air. He's talking his trash. But then you come out here and it's like, well, you look like just another guy. And we know you're not. At least your talent would suggest that you're not, given where you were drafted and your physical gifts. But he's someone who has to pick it up, I think, after the first few days of training camp, because second round picks, again, you're expected to play. You're expected to be a factor in this offense. And I get that their wide receiver room is, in my opinion, one of the deeper rooms on the roster, but the depth of it was determined in large part because of you. Now, if someone goes down this year, you're the guy. If Josh Downs has to miss time, you were in the slot last year. If Alec Pierce, God forbid, has to miss some time, you're fast enough to be the deep guy. So in a way, you're a very valuable player. I just haven't seen that growth just yet from him. I thought he looked pretty good in the spring, but so far throughout training camp, under the hot sun in Westfield, he has not panned out to a certain degree. But also, it's early. He is a young player still, but he is someone similar to Anthony Richardson. You don't want to get caught up talking about potential without actually seeing some results from time to time.
Well, okay, so what you're saying is if A.D. Mitchell doesn't hack it for the Colts, then you're going to have to step in, show off that blazing 40 speed, and just say, like, hey, throw me the deep ball. That's what I'm going to take the top. I'm taking the top off, right?
I'm a true athlete. So
4.78. Do I have that right?
4.78. I had a little wind drag with the bucket hat. I'm thinking I'll have to run it again. I had the bucket hat on. Stance might not have been that great.
Yeah,
didn't stretch for it. And the reason why I did it, Jim, is we're on the radio, 107.5 The Fan, with Kevin Bowen, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, I should run the 40. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, why not? And I don't think anybody thought I was really going to do it. I teased about it on the radio. But after we finished up yesterday, I was like, you know what? I got about 5 minutes. This won't take too long. Went over there to sign a waiver form, and Kevin couldn't believe it. He was like, I can't believe you signed this waiver form. And I was like, yeah, I got to sign this because if I, pull a hamstring, they're not going to be responsible for that. And I did not cut any kids, contrary to what Kevin Bowen said. I did not cut any kids in line, but if they were slowing around, I might have, got in
this
line.
video. There's a girl in there watching you going like, oh, that was supposed to be me.
Well, hey, you snooze, you lose, children. I'm glad I was able to tell you. And I was joking. I went over there and I was like, all right, which kid wants to lose? And so some of the parents are like, this guy's nuts. And had a good time doing it. Ran the 40. And I think I'll run it one more time, Jim, at the end of camp. Because as Frank Reich once said, and others, and this is universal athlete cliche, I want to get 1% better each day.
Listen, man,
better.
I'm looking at this video. I could shave a couple tenths of a second off of this right now. You got to get that
runner. Man.
I'm watching this video. You start your starting stance. You rock back a little bit first. That's taking tenths off. You gotta lean forward. And then the bucket hat. I mean, I'm thinking you could get this too close to a 4.7 flat.
There we go. See, I'm glad you believe it. We had people who were questioning the time. It is laser time. It is absolutely 100% correct. There was no handheld people, helping me out there. Shout out to whoever was on the clock. Thanks for what you did there. Maybe look a little faster than perhaps I am. But honestly, it was just a lot of fun, Jim, being out at camp, seeing everyone who listens to the podcast, listens to the radio, reads my work in The Athletic. That's like our one time a year to really connect with the fans. And so I enjoy doing it. And heck, if anybody else wants me to do anything else when it comes to the activities, I can't throw football that great, but I'll try. If you got a kid who wants me to, wants to race, want to compete against me, tell them line it up. But the last thing I'll leave you with, Jim, is, for those who are questioning the 40 time in Indianapolis, Kevin Bowen, Stephen Holder, others, line it up. It's right there for you.
I was just going to say, tell KB to put his money where his mouth is, man.
That's
I said, get him out there.
That's what I'm saying.
Tell him I'm questioning his, that's ridiculous. Where's the competitive competitive nature that KB? Come on.
That's what I'm saying.
He's got to prove something to.
I have folks in the YouTube chat from the morning show, the fan morning show. No. You don't get to criticize if you ain't run the 40. But jokes aside, though, don't do it if you have not, ran full speed in a while. Thankfully, I do that quite often playing basketball. So I was feeling pretty good about myself. I did feel a little hamstring tightness, but I took it off today, relaxed a little bit. But it was a lot of fun out there for camp, Jim. It was. It's been fun so far. Hot before.
Hey, listen, I was, listen, I saw the time and I did a double take. I was like, that's 4.78? I thought maybe it was 5.78. Like I said, you getting, there's a good handful. I think you and KB were talking about. There's a good handful of Colts. You could take them. You're faster than Jacoby Brissett.
Look, sure. I'll take my not the slowest Colt label anytime, any day. So for those listening, for those listening and stuck around that long just to really entertain my non-existent athletic ability, I appreciate it. We'll be back with you all next week. Regularly scheduled podcast from here on out, probably now until next year, literally February, when it comes to the Colts. And so thank you all for listening. Thank you all for tuning in. And you can get the James Boyd podcast, of course, wherever you subscribe to your podcast. So until next time, my friends.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even, like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic.
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip.